Hey everyone, welcome back to the Automotive Flex channel. So this is a little bit of a different video because I'm going to be showing you my RC car collection because, I don't know man, I'm into RCs. I thought it would be fun. I show off car stuff here and RCs is basically just car stuff, but smaller and cheaper sometimes. Some of them are quite expensive, but we'll get into that. I thought you guys might find this interesting because if you're generally into car stuff, you probably also have come across hobby grade RCs before, and maybe you're curious about what they're like. But if you have some, be sure to let me know in the comments. I'm interested to see what kind of RCs you guys run and if you are still into it. For me personally, I actually started with RCs before I got into cars, but I'll explain that in a little bit. This video is going to be a little bit more similar to what you might find on my second channel where I do car stuff and frequently now go-kart stuff. More stuff to come on that, by the way, more updates coming, but the last video there is a banger. Anyways, let's get into these RCs. So you'll probably notice a little bit of a theme throughout this video that the stuff I have is pretty rough, and that's kind of how it is with a lot of my things because a lot of these things I buy used. So let's talk about this. This is a Tamiya TL01, I believe. It is a touring car, and it is my very first RC, although these days it's looking at pretty rough. I did not buy it new. In fact, I bought it very used from the hobby store local to me back in my parents' house. And I mean, it looks pretty rough, but I didn't do this paint job. I did the stickers to try and bring it back a little bit. The body, I think, is a TVR. I'm not 100% sure, to be honest. I ended up putting some infinity lights on it because, yeah, I don't know, and a lot of stickers, and this wing is not something that came with it. I ended up putting that on there. This is how it works with RCs, but the thing is, like, you're doing it low risk. Like, this wing was, I think, 10 bucks in a set with two, so I just slapped a wing on my car for 10 bucks. But the reason that I bought this thing was because it was only 100 bucks. Oh, that's crispy. Oh, oh, that's bad. Oh man. Okay, never mind. I take it back. It was never worth it. But yeah, this thing was only 100 bucks for a working RC car, and I thought, you know what, this is a great way to get into it. And I bought this before I was even able to drive, so I was maybe 15-ish, which was quite a long time ago. That would have been 2010. Ouch, I'm old. A little bit of detail about this chassis: it is all-wheel drive. It came with these wheels and also these ones, but these aren't glued, so they're kind of just, I don't know. This thing has never worked right. The gearing inside of it is all screwed up, and I had no know-how to take it apart at that point, so it's always been screwed up. The servo in here is good. This part is good, but the motor is out of it. Or actually, no, this is a replacement motor. Funnily enough, that motor is from a Power Wheels. But again, I don't think this thing works right. It's not the best design chassis, and it kind of makes sense that it's an older one of the models, but I do have a newer one to show you as well. As far as first RC cars goes, this one isn't too bad, but this was only the beginning. Enter my now highly customized Axial SCX-10. This was my second RC. I bought it brand new. And I figured, I mean, I don't know what I was thinking at the time because I really wanted to buy a car, obviously. Cars are my thing, but I couldn't afford one, and I believe I was just 16 at the time, so I had just gotten my license. I was driving around my parents' vehicles, and I figured that a car was a long way off, so I ended up dropping like 600 bucks on this thing, which was insane at that point. So you don't actually get this hardtop when you buy this. It's just this body, and then I added that hardtop. This is from a trail incident. I believe that was 2 years ago, so I have been running this fairly recently. You'll notice that the axles and stuff are all metal, and yeah, that you don't get it like that either. That's custom. The original axles are actually on this thing over here, but we'll talk about that in a bit. At one point, I had a full light kit on here, so you can see the holes very poorly reamed into the body. This thing is pretty rough. At the moment, it isn't great. I believe its current problem is that it sags too much at the back when there's a battery in there, but let me show you with the lid off. Dun da da! Yeah, so this is the older style SCX-10 where the battery's at the back. The new ones, I believe, are in the middle or at the front. They're a little bit differently oriented, I know that, My uncle-in-law has one, and we'll talk about him more in a little bit. But I've been able to see the undercarriage. Drivetrain wise, this thing is stock. One thing to notice: none of my RCs are brushless, because when I was getting into this stuff, brushless motors were insanely expensive. Now they're cheap as heck. You can buy them on Amazon for cheap, but none of my motors are going out at the moment, except, well, we'll get to that. So I haven't bought any motors recently. I've just been riding on my stock of brushless ones. Yeah, but everything here is just as it was when it came from the factory. This one was ready to run, and when I bought it, it was already assembled. I just had to buy a battery, and then I was good to go. So definitely an easy way to get into RC stuff. These are extremely capable in the trails and things like that. So it's definitely easy to get into it, but just like everything in this area, it's like crack. Once you start, it's hard to stop, and then things get a little bit out of control. So we may as well talk about this thing now. This is actually something that I believe, actually, this is my most recent RC right here. It's upside down. It's not in the best of shape, and I dare not flip it over because I know it's going to fall apart. But it is just a random chassis from Alibaba, and it came with these metal axles and metal linkages and such. That was a gift from my uncle-in-law, my wife's uncle, because he's super into RCs. He was trying to clear out a spot on his shelf and buy more, so he just gave me his rock buggy, I guess you would call it. So that's why this thing has axles here from, I believe they're from Alibaba or AliExpress. And then same thing up front in that servo as well. But everything works. It's just a little bit saggy on the rear end with these cheap shocks. So I'm going to be swapping things around a little bit, putting the big meaty ones that I had back on, and we'll see if it's still good on the trails, hopefully when it dries up outside. As I was really into RCs, naturally my two younger brothers were also interested, and my parents decided to buy them RCs when I had bought everything myself. That's what it's like being an older brother, if you're wondering. But this is my middle brother's RC, although at this point he's kind of given it to me because he doesn't use it, and he hasn't used it in probably 8-10 years, something like that. We're all old, and it haunts me a little bit on the inside. But this is a team associated SC10 two-wheel drive stadium truck. All of my stuff is 1/10 scale, but this thing is massive. And yeah, it's been a lot of fun. I've been using it myself just on the street, and I wish it was four-wheel drive, but two-wheel drive is good too. I mean, I just wish it was four-wheel drive. This one we got ready to run as well with a receiver and everything else installed, but my brother being he's one of those kids, he ended up breaking it at some point, and I rebuilt it for him with a new ESC. And then I broke it, because of course I did. So then I went and put the stock motor from the previous Tamiya TLO1 touring car in here. And it's pretty slow, but I mean, it works. It could use a little bit more juice. I want to get a brushless setup for this, basically, is what I'm trying to say. My father-in-law actually has one of these, and it has a really nice brushless system in it. I believe it's Spectrum. And yeah, he rips it pretty hard. I've driven it. It's really fast. I want this one to be just like that, so we're probably going to go expensive brushless system one day. So it took me a long time to get into LiPo batteries, which means for a while I was running the old Tamiya plugs on literally everything, but now I've got T plugs, and I'm just running a battery from Amazon. It's just a 2S LiPo 5200, nothing fancy. I think it was only 30-40 bucks Canadian, so yeah, I rate it. It's pretty good. I've had no problems with it. I tried to get the high output one so I could have a little bit more juice in case going to brushless, but you know what? If I end up going brushless, I'll probably end up going 4S, which is going to be cool. Speaking of siblings, this is my youngest brother's RC, which he doesn't use, and neither do I very much. It does have a fatal flaw, but I'll tell you about that in a second. So Duratrax. Nothing fancy, again, very basic, but I mean, we used them a decent amount. Look at that angry grin on that boy. This one has non-stock front suspension, and the reason for that is my youngest brother ended up breaking a shock, so I went out and I bought him some suspension to remedy that issue. So that he could keep playing RCs with me, because I was bored on my own. Everything else about this thing is stock though. Two-wheel drive, again, not fancy, brushed motor. yeah, it's a Duratrax. I don't know what else to expect here, but I would like to revive it. The problem is it has a weird issue where the steering gets stuck. So it'll steer too far and then get stuck. And then if you like turn down the steering servo in its range, then you won't be able to turn very much. So it's kind of useless, but you can kind of see it there. It just turns way too sharply and then it kind of binds, basically. This is my crowning jewel and my crowning accomplishment. And there's the other wing from that wing set. Yeah, this is a Nissan Silvia, which is a Tamiya TT02 kit, or TT01 kit, I believe. It's a drift car, drift chassis. I never put the mirrors on. I must have put the mirrors on. I guess I just took them off at some point. There are wires hanging out from the underside, but that's just because it's not fully buttoned up at the moment. It needs some work, and I'll tell you about that in a sec. But I bought this thing as a kit, which means I painted this, and I also stickered it, although I decided to go very, very light on the stickers because some of my other cars are stickered to the absolute nines. This one is also pretty fancy because it has a full light kit in it as well, so it has lights at the back and lights at the front. It's not the best install, I will admit, but I'm happy with it. I like the black inside and silver outside look of this thing. Silvios are cool, and this one is no exception. Underneath, so this was a kit, like I said, which means I built this chassis from the instructions provided. And the stuff that's here, the motor and the ESC, actually came with the kit as, I guess, a little bit of a bonus from Tamiya. The servo is from another vehicle, but it is broken, so I don't know why I put it in there. I was being cheap. I didn't want to buy a servo, and it kind of ruined this car. Great car, though. Very fun. And I have some drift wheels on it, which is really cool as well. Just plastic tires, basically, for RCs. So, yeah, these things are awesome. This ESC is also brushless capable. You can see it has the extra plug. So that might be something that I do in the future. Again, the motor here is fine. Maybe I can take this one, put it in the trophy truck, and then put a brushless system on this drift car. We'll see. But yeah, this thing's a lot of fun. Probably noticed that every RC so far is electric, and basically all of the stuff that you've seen as well has been hobby grade stuff. But this is a Nitro RC truck from Nitro RCX. It's hobby grade, but it's Exceed RC, man. It's kind of like somewhere in between toys and hobbies, and it's nitro powered. I love slash hate slash love to hate this thing. It's not terrible, but man, I would advise heavily against buying cheap nitro vehicles because they just seem to have problems. Like, basically every single time I took this out back in the day, it broke, and that presented a big issue because then it's not fun to take out anymore. It's like the whole point of RCs is to go out and have fun with it, and then, I mean, I'm somebody who kind of puts them away wet a little bit, but I had a camera mount on top of this as well for taking video. When this thing was working, it was so fun to bomb up and down the fields and stuff, but man, it breaks so easy. I had wheels fly off. I've had other issues, which let's talk about. The entire back piece here is all glued. It's literally just like a piece of clear plastic that I hot glued in there the best that I could because it all cracked. This body is extremely thin. It's not actually protoform. Ew, that air filter, ooh, crusty. This thing hasn't run in years. All of this stuff that I'm telling you about, except for this thing right here, is like at least actually at least 8 years old. Everything that I have is ancient. I haven't bought an RC in like ages. So it's important to note that the servo that was in the drift car is actually from this. And the servo that's in here is a really nice Traxxas one that I paid way too much for at a future shop. And the reason why this is all set up this way is because I was at my grandparents' house driving this thing. Oh, look at that rim. Like, what the heck is that? But I was at my grandparents' driving this thing, and I smashed it into a curb, as you do, and the servo broke, and so it has a big clunk in it. And so I went to the nearest place that could potentially have a replacement, and I dropped way too much money on that, therefore increasing the value of this thing by like $75, which would be 50%. No, I'm kidding. It's a 240 US dollar RC, something like that. But I got it on sale. It was only 200 bucks. The engine has some issues. I think there's something wrong with it. I never broke it in properly because I had no idea about that stuff. I have actually run it quite significantly, but the exhaust keeps popping off. Let me show you. That is a pop can in between the header and the exhaust, and that was my gasket, I guess, because I lost the previous one. The bolts that are in there are replacement ones. This thing is basically a clone of a Red Cat Racing RC, so I just found some bolts for that at the hobby store, slapped them in. Same thing with the Polestar, the bolts for that keep coming out, so it is literally wired in. I like nitro, but nitro is a pain in the butt, especially when you make it more of a pain and buy a really crappy one. Also, I didn't do any maintenance. Obviously, I was just a kid, so yeah, I had no idea what I was doing. If I was to buy another one of these, I would try to be meticulous with it. You'll also notice that the end links at the back are pink, and they're actually aluminum. And the reason for that is I broke them, and I had to go buy some at the hobby store. Those alone were another like 75 bucks. I put more money into this thing in parts than it was actually worth to buy a brand new one, which is a little bit sad. Just when you think I'm out of RCs, let's get to the non-hobby grade stuff. So this is a classic one I got at the thrift store ages ago with my grandma. This is pre any of the other RCs that I have. Let me just remove this gigantic Puco model that my wife made from a thing that somebody made on the Discord. But the Scorpion, yeah, I like it because it's 2-speed, so it's really cool. It's actually not slow. I was able to hook up a more modern nickel metal hydrate battery to it a long time ago and run it, and it's not slow. So that's why I keep it around. It's just kind of a cool memento. And this is my latest project. My dad found this in a garbage dump, and he was throwing out some garbage. He saw this thing on the ground. He said, "Why don't I get that for my son for some reason?" And so he did, and now I have it. It's a Fast and the Furious ram charger thing. I don't know what the heck. I haven't seen any of the recent movies. But it appears to have some like LED light stuff going on. I haven't actually taken it apart yet. This is not hobby grade, this is a toy. But it's rear wheel drive. I don't have a remote for it. I have a battery, but I'm not going to be able to use it. I thought it'd be a lot of fun to buy like a cheap RC set on Amazon, just like an ESC and a receiver. Although I actually have an extra one here. And then I could probably make this thing actually run at least a little bit. It'd be a lot of fun to see if I can just get this thing to be ridiculously fast and still look the way that it does. There's really not much in there, is there? Oh, it's got a big light bar on the front though. Well, I'm looking forward to digging into it one day, but I don't know when that day is gonna come. If you want to see more about this random RC, then please let me know. I'll indulge you. I'll make it happen. So that's it for my RC collection. Hopefully you enjoyed. I mean, it's basically just me talking for 20-ish minutes, but I mean, that's basically what you would come to expect from my channel. So yeah, like I said at the beginning, if you want to let me know what kind of RCs you guys have, then drop them down in the comments. I'm still really interested in RCs, but at the moment, it just doesn't make a ton of financial sense to buy one. And then even used, they go for like way too much money, so I don't know. I don't want to buy any like cheap, straight out of China garbage stuff, but I'm a little bit too budget oriented to buy another professionally graded RC. The guys who I was talking about before, earlier in this video, my father-in-law and my uncle-in-law, they are both really into 1/8 scale RCs, and I think I want to get one of those too to join in with them and have some fun. There's a track not too far from where we are, so yeah, I kind of want to jump into the fun. But if you have any 1/8 scale buggy or truggy suggestions, hit me up in the comments as well. I think I've seen most of them, but there's definitely some that I'm missing. Until then, guys, thank you for watching, and the title is a bit of a lie. This is not an RC channel now, but it is a automotive in general channel, not just automation. So yeah, see you guys soon.